Your rent went up. Not because you did anything, not because the building got better. The obvious explanation is that more people wanted to live where you live. In most American cities, that is not what happened. In the 2010s, America started building 44% fewer homes a year than in the 1970s. Not for one bad year, for an entire decade. Meanwhile, the country added 128 million people. Nobody sat in a room and decided your rent should go up. It went up because for 15 years, almost nothing got built. If you have read anything about rent lately, you already have an answer ready. Wall Street bought your neighborhood. It is a good story. It is also mostly wrong. Institutional investors own about 5% of single-family rentals. The very largest firms own 3% of them. That is less than 0.5% of every single-family home in the country. In a few metros, the number is meaningfully higher. Nationally, it cannot move a market this size. It is not nothing. It is not the explanation either. There is a second popular answer: pricing software. Landlords feeding the same data into the same algorithm, arriving at the same rent. That one is real enough to have produced federal litigation. But an algorithm can only suggest a price. Someone still has to have nowhere else to go. Both stories share a shape. Somebody powerful did something to you. That shape is satisfying. It is also a distraction. The real question is quieter. Why did you have no alternative to begin with? This is what America actually started building every year since 1970. The dashed line is the 1970s average, 1.77 million homes a year. Since 2008, not one single year has reached it. A shortfall that runs for 1 year is a blip. A shortfall that runs for 18 becomes structural. It does not sit still while you wait. It compounds year on year. In 2009, the country started 554,000 homes, the lowest number in the entire history of the series. Everyone remembers that collapse. Almost nobody talks about what came next. Building never returned to where it had been. It just stopped falling. 20 years on, the country still starts 45% fewer houses than it did in 2005. That is not a recession. That is the new normal. Freddie Mac puts the gap at 3.7 million homes. Other estimates disagree because the definition of a shortage does. Per person, the country builds at little more than half its 1970 rate. 7 homes per 1,000 people then. 4 now. In 1972, America started 2.36 million homes in a single year. In 2025, with 128 million more people, it started 1.36 million. Half the building, twice the country. There is no shortage of demand. There is a shortage of permission. You may have seen new apartment towers going up and assumed the problem was solving itself. Apartments finished in 2024 hit the highest level in decades. But look at when they were started. A building finished in 2024 was started in 2021 or 2022. What you are watching go up is the end of the old pipeline, not the start of a new one. Apartment starts have already fallen 37% from their peak. So start with a simpler question. Where can an apartment legally be built? In San Jose, 90% of residential land is reserved for detached single-family houses. Not expensive, illegal. Seattle reserves more than 80% of its residential land the same way. Minneapolis, around 60, and it was considered radical for changing that. This is not a market outcome. The apartment you needed was not too expensive to build. It was illegal to build. Zoning maps are drawn by cities, one hearing at a time. Every line on them was voted for by people who already owned a home. None of them thought they were setting your rent. Now take a project that is legal and try to pay for it. Banks used to lend 75% of the cost. Today they lend 55%. The building did not change. That gap is 80% more cash the developer has to find before breaking ground. And the money they do borrow now costs 8.5%. So the project simply does not happen. The market did not ignore the price signal. The rules said no. One more thing happened, and it landed on renters specifically. In January 2021, the 30-year mortgage rate hit 2.65%, an all-time low. By October 2023, it had passed 8. Anyone holding a cheap loan stopped selling. Moving meant giving it up. Existing homes are the largest source of supply in any given year, far larger than new construction. Sales fell by a third to the lowest level since 1995. The people who would have bought had nothing to buy. So they kept renting, and the queue for your apartment got longer. Not one of those households did anything wrong. Neither did the owners who stayed put. That is what makes this hard to fix. There is no villain to remove. A rule here, a rate there, a hearing that ran long. Each one defensible, together decisive. 15 years of separate, sensible decisions quietly agreed that your apartment should not exist. None of this reverses quickly. A shortage built over 15 years does not clear in one. The apartments that would have absorbed you were never started, which leaves an uncomfortable question. If nobody is allowed to build it, who exactly is the market supposed to serve? Next time, what actually happens to the money in your bank account?